Welcome to Encouragement for Living Life with Lockwood and Lockwood. The guys are here to encourage you in your attempt to live more confidently and successfully in our world. They are highly trained and experienced mental health professionals, but they are not your mental health professional. They are sharing encouragement through information and discussion. People are complex. Just because an idea helps one person doesn't mean it will help someone else. You need to consult with your own professional who will hopefully know what is best for you in your situation. Now, it's time for Lockwood and Lockwood.
Without forgiveness, loving others on a consistent basis is nearly impossible, or is impossible. So forgiveness is a major thing if you hope to have consistent, loving relationships with other people.
Sure.
Now, if you doubt that, try this reality on for size. The reality is we get hurt.
Mm.
The other reality is we hurt others.
Mm-hmm.
Some people, I want to give I mentioned Allender to you, Dan Allender. He has a book called Bold Love that talks a lot. The whole book is about this. So it kind of beats it in my mind to death. But I was getting some CEUs when I was laying in the lounge chair after my knee replacement, because I couldn't do a whole lot for work, reading the book and answering questions I could do. So I used some of that time when I was rehabbing before I could get back to the office to do that. And I thought it was a really, really good topic. Good book, too. I think it's a really good book. He's very thoughtful, a lot of depth with him. Like I said, I felt like he beat it to death a little bit, but his principles were really useful. And I thought, well, we need to talk about forgiveness, because without it, you cannot stay close to people because you're going to get hurt. And when we get hurt, what do we tend to do?
I mean, all sorts of things. We run away, we fight, we...
Well,
all this...
run away, you tend to withdraw, run away, protect.
Yep.
And fight means hurt back.
Usually.
Yeah, it means hurt back. And neither one help restore intimacy, And
right.
Healthy intimacy, and to stay close, you need to resolve. I don't think people know what it really takes to forgive. To really forgive, not just to say I forgive you. I don't know what that means when someone says that. It has to be followed up with some action, which means, are you now willing to be vulnerable again? Because if you can't be vulnerable again, you're not truly forgiving someone. To truly forgive, to get back in a relationship, you've got to be vulnerable, which means you've got to deal with the hurt. At least enough to be vulnerable again.
Yeah.
It's a loveless marriage, where people have hurt each other for years, and they are together sometimes. Sometimes it ends in divorce, of course, but or other kinds of acting out with other people and stuff like that. But it often can be just a loveless marriage where people are together for financial reasons or kid reasons or whatever the reason may be, but they lack the passion, lack the intimacy that really is fulfilling. Helps you feel close to someone and feel good. Your mom came over and walked with me today. I'm trying to get back out and walk. It's a pain in the butt with a knee replaced to walk downhill.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of strength to walk downhill. Uphill
Sure.
is great. Level's not great, but uphill is really good. My knee really works well there. But she came over because we get closeness from walking together. She can fill me in on her day, and I can, talk about what I'm doing. I usually don't talk a lot about what I'm doing. I just go do it. You know what I'm saying? But she can feel close, and it feels good for me to feel close too when we're walking together. It's better than doing it by myself. I've done a lot by myself, but it's much better to do it with somebody. It's more enjoyable, And then I got a little nurturing from it. She went and got me something from Starbucks so I could eat something before my 9:30 appointment at Midwestern time here and Central time, and so I could get through the rest of the day without, eating too much and, whatnot, which was really nice too. Feels like love. Feels like you're cared about, like your word cared about, so. But anyway, but a lot of that's not going to happen well unless both people can forgive. Because people are going to hurt each other in mild ways. They're going to hurt each other in major ways. Betrayals, And Allender divides hurt into a couple things: evil. You're used or abused, or the minor things of thoughtlessness, things like that are part of the human condition. Of course, he deals with a lot of abuse, so he's dealing with a lot of what you call evil, either being used or abused. And when things like that happen in a significant way to somebody, forgiving can be very, very difficult. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to say. I don't know. Like,
Go ahead. Yeah.
as the resident couples and family therapist here, I would
Uh huh.
say this is a very difficult topic, even though it sounds very simple, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and there's a couple of reasons it's difficult that you already listed, which is, how do you handle hurt? What do you do with it? What kind of hurt is happening? Those are all important layers, but there's this other layer I'd like to add, which you may or may not agree with me. I'm not sure, genuinely. Um, I think that I think that there are two camps around the concept of forgiveness. I think there are people who, for religious or moral reasons or whatever belief system reasons, believe that forgiveness is the correct answer no matter what. And then there are people who live in the camp of forgiveness is conditional and forgiveness is selective in the sense that you're not supposed to forgive unconditionally. You're supposed to forgive only when you believe the relationship is worth staying in some way, shape, or form, family, friend, romantic, whatever it is. And so there's basically, essentially, from what I can tell, there's two camps of people. There are the unconditional
Generally,
forgiveness folks, usually on the religious side of things. And then you've got well, if that relationship really doesn't matter, there's really no point in forgiving. You might as well just kind of move on, pretend they're dead, whatever it is, and live with the hurt and probably resentment, etc., that happened.
right?
So I can actually make a case for both. However, I would like to make a non-religious case for forgiveness.
Good.
So
Good.
so to me, there's the Christian case and the Jewish case and all this for forgiveness. I don't think people need either of us to talk about that because there's just so many YouTubes and TED Talks and sermons and all these things. We're not going to do that better than any of them, probably.
Nope.
But on the clinical psych side of things, the argument I would make to be in the camp that says forgive no matter what, basically, there's like one exception. But with that one exception, forgive no matter what. And so the reason I live in this camp as a couples therapist and a family therapist and just as a professor and all these things is because basically when you're not willing to forgive, you're building up resentment of some kind. And
Amen.
resentment is wholly toxic. It serves a purpose short term. So resentment is very useful for the next 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever it is because you just got hurt or whatever. And so you're alert and you're trying to plan and figure things out and justify your feelings and all these things and kind of lick your wounds. So I see how it's adaptive for a very, very brief period of time. However, after that immediate reaction, however long that is for you, that resentment is highly toxic. It's more toxic than lead or mercury or gold in your cornflakes or whatever it is psychologically. It's about as
Can you
toxic as, sorry.
define it so
Oh,
people
okay.
know?
Resentment is, I mean, there's depends upon what definition you want to use. There's like the AA version of it, there's this clinical psych version of it, but regardless, it's all kind of the same. So, resentment is holding negative, usually judgment, anger towards another person because you have been wronged. It's I am victim, I am hurt, and you are bad. So that's usually how it plays out in people's minds.
Right.
And so it's like an all bad, you are all bad, and I am all good, I am the victim. Right? That's the
And
simplest.
people tend, let's combine it with the AA. People tend then to rethink and refeel this real or imagined harm over and over and over, which is what makes it toxic.
Yes, exactly. Resentment's one of those feelings we're programmed to have, I think, adaptively because it keeps us on alert to not get hurt in the short term again. Are they going to cuss
Right.
at me again? Are
Right.
they going to hit me again? Whatever it is. So it's a protective
Right.
mechanism for the next 30 minutes, but after the next 30 minutes, it's super toxic for you. And so,
Right.
um, with that definition in mind, I think the problem with not forgiving people, with like one exception, is if you don't forgive people, you're going to build up resentment. And even if your resentment is 100% justified, if you are 99.9% the victim in the experience, which happens, people
Oh
are,
yeah. Yeah.
they are assaulted, they get into terrible car accidents because someone is drunk and hits them, all these things, right, that are
Right.
real, that you
Right.
did nothing wrong. You did nothing wrong except existing and being in the wrong place at the wrong time, right?
Right.
So
Right.
these are real things that happen. So I am not trying to say, at least, that you're not entitled to say use that word. You're not entitled to have that reaction. You're perfectly entitled to have that reaction, 100%. However,
I
if it's
can.
some, go
Can
ahead.
I add something to that? Entitled to have a
Yeah,
I think built into human beings, and I think you'll agree with this, is a sense of justice. See, I
sure.
think that sense of justice in people says I'm entitled to feel that way because I was hurt
Yes.
and I want justice. And then, but then if there is no way to get justice, where then resentment can settle in.
Yes. And we're
And it can
talking about
settle in anyway. Even if you get justice, you can still be resentful forever.
100%. And that's why
You know.
forgiveness is important to me as a
Yes.
clinician, as a
Yes.
couples therapist and things like that. We don't want resentment
Right.
to settle in, right? And so,
Right.
so many great family relationships, friendships, marriages, dating relationships die, months or even years before they end because
Yes.
resentment is set in and become concrete for people.
Yes.
So we got to bust up the concrete, basically. And so for me,
Yeah.
I see that resentment is basically toxic for most people in almost all situations, except for the very short term, like I said. And so,
Right. Need to respond to a situation. Right. Right. Need a
right.
trigger to respond. Yeah. Need
Yeah.
help.
And so for
Yeah.
me, what I would say specifically is forgiveness is the best antidote to resentment and to shame and things like that because it allows you to be back. Number one, most importantly, in my mind, you're now in control again. Right?
Ah.
So people who have been hurt see themselves as victims who are powerless. Whether it's
Correct.
50% your fault
Correct.
or 0% your fault, you see yourself as powerless when you are hurt, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's to some degree very normal and natural. The problem is you're no longer in the driver's seat. So long as you're psychologically no longer in the driver's seat, you're going to overreact to get back in the driver's seat at some point. And you might even overreact in maladaptive ways. Anger, shame,
Amen.
resentment, things like that, right? So for me, forgiveness is the best way to be in the driver's seat without letting things that are more potentially harmful to you, not all, because anger is sometimes very useful. And shame is sometimes in limited circumstances useful, and resentment is in limited circumstances useful. But most of the time, those things are not super adaptive. So I think forgiveness is the best way to be in the driver's seat to combat and deal with and manage and like clean up, get the broom out and clean up resentment and hurt. Because,
Well, can I?
yeah,
I agree, but let's clarify for people because forgiveness does not mean accepting unacceptable behavior.
yeah,
Forgiveness is different. Forgiveness is about letting go of the hurt, the pain, the resentment, so that you can be free again, like you say, be in the driver's seat and not be a victim of what happened to you. But it does not mean accepting unacceptable behavior. And
right.
people often
Agree.
think forgiveness means accepting unacceptable behavior, and that's not the case. You can forgive someone and then stop them by how you interact with them from hurting you further and stand.
Absolutely.
All right. So, okay,
Yeah,
go on.
yeah, yeah. To me, actually, in my mind, forgiveness is importantly you changing your behavior,
Right.
right? Like it's very, very important for when you're trying to forgive someone or you want them to change their behavior that you don't focus on their behavior, you actually focus on changing your behavior. right? So true forgiveness is about you changing your behavior.
It really is.
If that
And
makes
what has
sense.
to change? Yes. Well, then let's get into the guts of it. What has to? You're freezing up there, son. What
Yeah.
has to change to really forgive? What do you have to do inside of you to really forgive someone that's hurt you deeply?
Well, it's tricky because it depends upon the type of hurt, obviously. So for some people,
Right. Right.
if you've been physically assaulted, right? What I would expect people to do if they want to forgive someone who's hit them is to have had some kind of conversation where you assert a boundary, right?
Right.
You're not allowed to
Right.
hit me again, like you said. But the second,
May require that for them to really believe you, so you have a healthy boundary, they may need to leave the home for a period of time. You may expect them to have to seek professional help, go to a group on anger, etc. Could be many different responses that help you set that boundary so that then you can be more assured that that will not happen again to you.
yeah, so real forgiveness involves not just accepting what happened psychologically
Right.
and recognizing where you currently have power, because those are two cognitive steps, right? So, step number one is accepting that you're currently okay, and then and what happened and all the things that led up to it. And number two is, learning that you can manage things now, right? But behaviorally, it's setting a boundary sometimes. That's part of forgiveness. Another part of forgiveness is having a new attitude with people, right? And so for some people, you were very cavalier with them, right? You're very casual with them. And that's part of, maybe it's not your fault necessarily that they hurt you in some way. However, if
Right.
you have the incorrect attitude towards people because you misunderstand who they are, right? Then you will get hurt, if you take a relationship for granted. Or if it's the opposite, if people take you for granted and you just kind of, you're cavalier about the fact that people take you for granted, whatever it is, right? Whatever the particular dynamic, your attitude also has to change
Oh no,
in the
that
relationship.
this is getting into the guts of forgiveness.
Yeah.
Forgiveness requires you looking at yourself and going, what might I be doing that encourages this? That is my weakness or defect of character that permits someone to treat me like that. And the more you look into yourself, the part of it, again, not that you're responsible for someone hitting you. They're still responsible. They hit you, and there's no reason in the world that they should hit you other than in
Ever.
self defense
Right.
if you're assaulting them.
Yeah.
So we're not saying blame yourself. We are
No.
saying look at how, if you're cavalier, if you're easily pushed around because your self worth's so bad that you don't value yourself enough
Yeah.
to care how you're treated, that's inviting to someone who's abusive.
Right.
As an example, so we want to make you uninviting to someone who's abusive. We want to increase your sense of worth and value. And in the process of working on that so that you can therefore stand up to people and expect to be treated better, you're going to realize your own humanness and your own flaws, like we just described, which makes it easier then to forgive another person because they have flaws that were taken out on you.
Right. So just to reiterate, so it's
Yeah.
100% clear and no one can take anything out of context of what we're saying.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Neither of us are blaming the victim. It is
Nope.
not your fault that
Right.
you were hit. It is not your fault that you were molested or raped. It is not your fault. It's not the dress that you wore. Maybe don't wear the dress, but it's still not your fault, right? So it is not your fault when people violate your physical body. It is never your fault, except for one exception where you punch them first, right? Because you have to be a complete idiot to realize that punching people is not going to result in them trying to punch you back. Other than that limited circumstance, it is literally never your fault. So neither of us are doing the old school conservative blame the victim bullshit. We are genuinely trying to say that human behaviors are patterned, and humans
Yes.
respond to
Yeah.
patterns of behavior. And so, although it's not your fault, if you could do something to deter someone's bad behavior, certainly we should do that.
We can
Whether
give,
that's
yes, and we can give, I can give a good clinical example of that. Why does a woman who was abused as a child end up in relationship after relationship that's abusive? Because that's her expectation. See, so you get with the dangerous guy who's going to hurt you. They may be fun, they may be exciting, good and bad, as I like to say, but dangerous. And it's a setup because your background to be hurt again and again and again. Real important for that lady. It could be a guy because it can be reversed now. We see women abusing men. It's a
all the
lot more
time,
than,
actually.
yes, it's a lot more than people thought,
Yeah.
and so we want to build in her enough value and self-worth that she can set good boundaries and expect better treatment for herself, which means she's going to find a better quality of guy and quit finding those guys that are going to take advantage of that vulnerability that she's got. But again, it's still not her fault that someone would
Right.
hit her. Not
Yeah.
her fault that people are screaming at her,
No.
being hypercritical of her. It's not her fault, but her background is inviting to it. It's a match for it. So we want her to grow a lot so she can get what she needs and get away from people like that. Or expect, if
Right.
you're married to one, expect them to quit treating you like that and actually get your shit together and
That
quit
too.
being abusive, etc.
Yeah. Yes,
Right?
agree.
Yeah.
So just to put a particularly fine point on the word expectations, just so everyone's clear,
Yeah.
we are not saying that the person is consciously choosing these types of people because they have like a blueprint that they're working off of in their brain that they consciously see and they're
Yeah.
thinking, "Oh, this is the same kind of person who used to yell at me a year ago."
Yay! I want
That's not what
them.
they're thinking.
No,
So
no, no,
we are not saying that
no.
these expectations are conscious, number one. But number two, what we're saying specifically is when you're treated a certain type of way for extended periods of time, years, right? What happens is that expectation you're talking about is literally a sense of safety, unfortunately, because we're habitual creatures. And so you know how to navigate an unsafe dynamic, then you know how to navigate a safe dynamic. Because if you've spent 10 years in an abusive relationship as a kid with whoever yelling at you, you know how to move in that environment. So you have plenty of skills and resources to manage that environment. So your brain
Right.
doesn't operate on
Right.
uncertainty very well. Your brain loves certainty. And so your brain is going to push you in the direction of things that feel more certain to you in relationships. So
Well,
if you
yeah.
grew up with the
Yeah.
certainty of someone yelling at you every day, then that feels like a dynamic that your brain's comfortable with. Not that you like it psychologically, but that it's reliable and predictable and manageable because we like reliability. And so your
Right.
brain will push you in the direction of someone that's easy to understand and easy to manage reliably. Whereas someone
Yes.
who's safe, you can't read them, you can't make sense of them, comparatively speaking, because your brain doesn't have as much data
And
in
you
there.
also don't believe down deep you deserve them either,
Right.
because
So the
you're used
consequence.
to bad treatment of you because of what abuse you went through. And believe me,
Right.
I want to underline too. This is all not conscious. When a
None of it.
patient begins in treatment and figures this out, if you're dealing with the person who's been abused, which is often what I'm dealing with, when they realize this, they go, "Oh my God, I'm repeating what I was used to growing up." And they're not aware of it, or these are intelligent people. They would not do this to themselves if they knew any better.
Right.
They wouldn't. So we're not
Yeah.
saying they're responsible for the abuse. We're saying, oh, they have this history that says, hey, I feel comfortable with you, the abusive
Right.
kind of person,
Right.
because of my background. But again, it's not conscious. And they live this
Never.
out and they go through it over and over again. But I remember hearing a case about this, and when they finally got to this and she saw what she was repeating, she went, "Oh my God, I've been living out what happened to me as a kid." And she began then to change
Mm.
when she finally saw the truth on her side and what she would then do the work that she needed to do to, and this is really important, to change her expectation or belief about what she deserves from the other
Yeah.
person. And in this is why I believe you can truly forgive. Because when
Mm.
you see your side of it, And again, there's a situation where you have no side, you got hit by a car.
Right.
It's different there. But when you see your side in this, it makes it easier for you because you go, oh my God, I was messed up. I was damaged. They're damaged, act like that.
Mm,
Because why is someone abusive? Well, someone probably
hmm.
abused them or was
Right.
so permissive they could be out of control with their behavior. See? And
Yeah,
so
perspective taking. Yeah.
if you see your flaws, you see your damage, it then becomes easier to forgive someone for their damage, even if that damage was taken out on you.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also want to add that
Yeah.
there's no way I think people can actually forgive if they not only have like a new perspective instead of expectations for themselves and other people, but also they need to have these new boundaries and new behaviors with people. But in addition to those two things, expectations, perspective, and boundaries, I also think forgiveness involves not attaching to how things should be. So the Buddhist in me loves this because this is a kind of a cure-all for us. But, when we attach to how things should be, right? There's an ought in our mind. That's usually when we're going to be miserable. When in reality, that ought is going to cause us to stay resentful, for instance, right? For instance, it's really easy for people to hear what we're saying and say, I should have known better, and then continue to beat themselves up. And so, what I
No,
would
well,
like,
that's the shame that comes from them having been abused as a child. In this case, in the
right,
case we're describing here,
right,
because shame will say it's me, it's my fault when it's not.
right. And the flag I'm planting here is
Yeah.
I think if we don't attach to how things should be anymore with these people, then it gets a little bit easier because we know what we want and we know what we need. However, once back, we were talking about this last episode too. Once we realize that the world is somewhat unpredictable and there are things we cannot control, we can set the best boundaries in the world. You and I have seen this over and over again in our careers. We help people grow and heal and have different expectations that are healthier, more in alignment with their values. However, even
Hmm.
when you do all that really good work, the world can still hurt you.
Oh,
So part of what
right.
we have to help people do is realize that even if you do your job perfectly correctly, there can still be circumstances that are
Yeah.
outside of your control, right?
Well, if you're in a marriage, you may change. Your expectations may change for what you expect from the other in terms of how they treat you. A lot can change, but the other person may still be. And I'm not talking about physical abuse or even severe yelling, things like that. But you may not still have a relationship the way you want it, even though you've
Yep.
changed, because they have to be willing to change also to have the kind
Yep.
of intimacy that really helps feel passion,
Right.
healthy closeness, things like that. And
Right.
so it may be less than fulfilling, but I think I want to go back and say I think you made a great case for the non-religious answer for why forgiveness is still the best way to go.
Yeah.
Okay, the
Yeah.
cancel culture sucks. And people need to be able to be flawed and human. And people are getting canceled for a lot less than rape and abuse, I'll guarantee you,
That's right.
which is ridiculous. But this idea of forgiveness came from faith. God knew that we needed to learn how to forgive. If we didn't, because He forgave us. So He set the model. You're going to do all kind of crazy, self-centered, prideful, arrogant stuff. I'm going to forgive you anyway because I'm going to set the model for you of how you treat other people. And for families to exist and be cohesive, to stay together, to do good things, to have society function well, you gotta forgive. It's essential. Real forgiveness, not I forgive you crap. I'm not big on that kind of stuff. I'm on real forgiveness. And that requires you surrendering your hurt, your anger, your rage, and be willing to be vulnerable again within condition of what is healthy in that relationship.
Mm.
With ability to set good boundaries, expect good, uh, learn how to stand up. I have a patient that, it was real funny years ago. The mother said we should go to therapy, and the patient said he grew enough. He went, We don't need therapy. You just need to deal with your self-centeredness. You just need to deal with how dismissive you've been my whole life and self-centered, how you dominate stuff. And that's all that needed to be said. Go get your help. You're the one. You're not going to drag me in there and make it my problem. You got the problem. And I thought that was wonderful. So now whenever the mother then from then on would act like that, if it was the right situation, you would just confront her. Now, did she change? I don't know now because the treatment's over. But I know now he is no longer a victim of her dismissive, withholding, dominating behavior.
Right. The word you just used is very important. Real forgiveness happens. You can tell that you've actually, let's call it, achieved forgiveness when you no longer see yourself as a victim in the circumstance,
Exactly.
which is very hard because we have, in my opinion at least, we have so many very good reasons to continue to see ourselves as the person who has been wronged, because it's technically true in most cases. However, that perspective is the perspective of someone who was just wronged. It's not the perspective of someone who is healed and had a new, like, changed view of themselves as a result of what happened. So, again, never blaming the victim, just trying to say that that attitude or that perspective of yourself actually is a good indicator. It's a diagnostic hallmark of how much forgiveness you've actually achieved. So, and to me, I would
Yeah.
also say this is
Yeah.
kind of a spectrum, to be fair, where it's like
Absolutely.
you could start the process of forgiving a person and maybe you said the words, set the boundaries, change the dynamic a little bit, and then a couple months later, it's a little worse, a little better. A couple months later, a little worse, a little better. And then maybe like 6 months later, or a year later, or whatever period of time, you've actually achieved the sense of actually, I am no longer the person who is the victim. I'm now the person who is in charge of the dynamic again. Or like, I have equal power now. I'm no longer the disempowered person, right? And so that is a really good sign that you probably have actually engaged in forgiveness because I think a lot of the talk in especially the religious world has no understanding of that particular piece of it. And then secondarily, there's this other problem, which is a lot of people feel socially compelled, they feel morally compelled to make the other person feel better, right? Because a lot of times in marriages in particular, I see this all the time as a couples therapist and in family therapy too. People feel normal garden variety social pressure to help the other person feel better when the other person's contrite. They actually do feel bad about their behavior. The problem is when you engage in forgiveness behavior and change for the other person, it's still not the full deal. It's actually not going to be very effective.
Right.
So forgiveness is something you should be doing in theory for yourself and only for yourself, in my opinion, not for the other person. The natural consequence will be that they will hopefully experience some benefit and feel better and all these things too. But when we're starting to do it for other people, it's essentially people pleasing. And that's not really
Correct.
taking better care of yourself,
No.
right?
No,
So,
forgiveness without really being able to take better care of yourself is a trap. You know, it's not going to get you. It's actually going to perpetuate whatever the dynamic is. It's painful. You know, it's like so. I feel bad for the abusive husband because he's now contrite, regretful, but he really doesn't change. So feeling bad for him just encourages him to do it more because you never
right.
stand up to him. Without the standing up part, it's not. It doesn't help him, and it doesn't
Yeah.
help you either. You know,
That's
so these things are not that simple, and often you're right. Oftentimes, forgiveness is just words that are not what we're really talking about. Real forgiveness is transformative. It's a surrender. It's facing your own issues. It's dealing with some stuff inside you so that you can forgive. You know, and that's
yeah.
that's that's often work. But if you want a good relationship, and it's not these severe things, sexual abuse, physical abuse, which require a lot of work often for people because usually that stuff's not happening to you unless you have, a background that helps create some of that vulnerability.
Mm.
in you. That takes a lot of work to overcome, but people do. They do the work to overcome so that they're different and no longer the perpetual victim that their background says they expect to be, without again consciously understanding that. And that's the key, that people just, they're so affected they don't know how affected they've been. Or they're so affected by living with some guy or some gal that's been abusive for a long period of time, they begin to believe, again, start feeling shame that something's wrong with them. So it's really important to do the work that comes with forgiveness, or it can backfire or just keep perpetuating the same dynamic that keeps you in pain. So it really takes work, and so forgiveness is, so it's easy to not forgive. It sucks to
Absolutely.
be resentful, but it's easier than doing the work that can be required when things are really difficult in the forgiveness area. And
Right.
sometimes it's really difficult to really forgive,
Right.
because people can be hurt greatly. Abuse, being used, abused, in extreme forms are really painful and take a lot of work to get to the point of forgiveness, which may not mean that you're re-engaged in the relationship, or it may mean you have a very different relation than you used to have. You may not interact as much with the parent who abused you. When you interact with them, you may be more confrontive of them and stand up to them better. You may, anyway, it depends on the situation, and you need someone to help guide you through those kind of things.
Yeah.
If you're dealing with those extreme situations.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
But guaranteed, real forgiveness, becoming vulnerable again in the relationship when it's not that severe stuff where a lot has to change, helps you have an ongoing relationship that can feel good, encouraging to you, supportive to you, loving to you, caring, etc.
Yeah.
And that takes work on both sides.
It does. It
Both
does.
sides.
Both parties have to. And I think this applies to friendships, family, work
Yes,
relationships,
friendships, you
romantic
betcha.
relationships,
You
etc.
betcha. Yeah.
All of these. So this is not just, couples therapy or whatever. This is all relationships because, the healthier relationships at work, wherever, the better we're doing psychologically. It's just life is better.
You
I
bet.
said I said earlier that there was one exception. I have
Yeah,
no
I
clue.
have been waiting for that. Yeah.
I have no
What's the
clue
one
if
exception?
I'm curious if you'll agree or disagree. So this is just something that I have uh, come to understand, and this is something I personally have developed, and I've basically used it with people, I think, effectively, but I don't know if you would agree. So I think there's one exception for forgiveness is when someone still wants you to die. And so if you are dealing with a person, whether it's intimate partner violence or it is a friend or some random person online or whatever it is, right? Whatever the cause, whatever the situation. If someone is still talking to you and treating you in such a way that they wish you to die, like anti-Semites, like I want all the Jews to die, or whatever
Oh,
it is, right? Just as an easy
right.
example, right? Um, if someone still wishes death upon you, I don't think forgiveness is very useful in any way, shape, or form. I would think that even if they're not doing things to try to end your life right now, if they want serious life-threatening harm to befall you, I think those people should walk off of a cliff, personally.
Son, I really disagree, and I think this will make sense to you. You can forgive and still not trust, and
Mm.
still have your guard up because of what the other person intends to do in terms of harming you. But the whole Middle East is a great example of a lack of forgiveness. So the resentment continues and builds and builds and builds. Then people justify their violence towards the other group. So it
I
never gets solved because there's never really true forgiveness.
I think it's more complicated than that when it comes to
What?
geopolitics.
Well,
But
yeah,
on the individual
yeah.
level though, I'm just talking on the individual level. I think the reason that I would say that I don't agree with you there is because in order to actually forgive somebody in the way that we're talking about, you actually have to be willing to build trust with people, and I will never trust someone who wishes death upon me.
Well, I agree with you that in the category, well, it doesn't have to be death. It can be continued chronic abuse. You don't have to put yourself in that position. You can forgive somebody, but you're never going to put yourself in that position to be hurt either. You're going to protect yourself.
I
So I
think
can still
hurt
see forgiveness, but I'm going to protect myself. If you're violent, if you're abusive, I'm going to make sure you don't hurt me. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure you don't hurt me.
I would
You
say
know,
until
you bring a knife, I'll bring a gun. I'm
I
going to
think
make sure you don't hurt me.
until the threat is gone, I don't think forgiveness is the move.
Well, I don't think forgiveness would be the first priority. The first priority would be protecting oneself,
Yeah, for
making
sure.
sure you're safe.
And I think
You
there are
know,
some
so
situations where people will not actually be safe. There are people who live in war-torn countries, who live in abusive families. And so what you and I are saying has no bearing on any of those kinds of situations, in my opinion.
well, no, if you're spending your energy being safe, you don't have energy to even think about things like forgiveness until you're in a safe position.
Yeah,
And then those kind of issues can eventually come up as you deal with all the hurt and pain.
yeah.
And we're not saying that kind of stuff's simple
No,
either.
no, yeah,
You know, so technically what I maybe disagree with you, but yeah, but it's still you protect first and your energy may need to go to surviving.
yeah,
Ukraine.
yeah.
The Ukrainians are trying to survive the intrusion of the Russians.
Sure,
You know, I don't think forgiveness is on their mind right now. I think trying to survive and stop them from advancing their country and taking more territory is their
sure,
priority. Now, the
sure,
healthier people in battles have the ability to forgive and realize this is war and it sucks and it hurts and it's terrible, you know, but they're going to do better with each other if they have the capacity to forgive. But that's not
Mm.
going to be their priority right now.
No, of course not.
Survival, winning is their priority. So, yeah, so your exception, no, I disagree with it technically, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
And I think anybody that listens to this is going to get what you're saying.
yeah,
Protect yourself. Make sure you resolve that because I see people that don't do that. And many people unfortunately die because they don't take their protection seriously, the
yeah,
threat seriously,
yeah.
and
Agree.
when they really needed to. Don't bring a squirt gun to a house fire. If someone's going to come after you with a knife, make sure you have a gun or have someone there with a gun. You know, to make sure that you're not hurt. You know,
Agreed.
do what it takes to be safe. Right? Yeah. So we'll leave you with that. That kind of a dire example. But again, the idea is forgiveness is better than not forgiving, and it can keep relationships intact and growing if you have the capacity to forgive the other person.
Agreed.
Thanks for listening to Encouragement for Living Life. We hope you were encouraged by today's discussion. If you have a question, you can email us at lockwoodwithlockwood@gmail.com. We'll do our best to answer it on one of our shows. Hope to see you next time.